Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel. Today I will tell you a touching story called The Old Man by the Window. This story is about love, family, memories, and hope. Listen carefully, learn new words, and enjoy the story. Let's begin. I am an old man now. My hair is white and my hands are weak. Every morning I sit by the window and watch the trees outside. The wind moves the leaves softly. Sometimes the sun shines through the branches, and the garden looks golden. As I sit there, memories come to my mind like waves. Some memories make me smile. Some make me cry. A long time ago, I was not old and lonely. I had a wife. Her name was Sarah. She was kind, gentle, and beautiful. She had a warm smile that made every day brighter. When I came home tired from work, Sarah always welcomed me with a smile. We had 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. I worked hard every day to give them a good life. I wanted them to have opportunities that I never had when I was young. Sarah took care of the house. She cooked delicious meals, helped the children with their homework, and filled our home with love. In those days, our house was never quiet. The children ran through the rooms laughing. Sarah sang while cooking. In the evenings, we sat together and talked about our day. Those were the happiest years of my life. But children grow up quickly. Soon they started going to school, making friends and spending less time with us. I understood that this was a normal part of life. They needed to explore the world and build their own future. Still, it made me a little sad. Sometimes I would sit beside Sarah and say, "The children are growing away from us." Sarah would hold my hand and smile. "They will always love us," she said. "One day they will come back." I believed her. Then one day, everything changed. Sarah became sick. At first, we thought it was only a small illness. But she became weaker and weaker. She stayed in bed for many weeks. I took care of her every day. I cooked for her, brought her medicine, and sat beside her for hours. Sometimes I told her funny stories to make her laugh. She smiled, but her smile was tired. One evening, she looked at me with gentle eyes and said, "Take care of the children, they still need you." I held her hand and promised. That night she closed her eyes and never opened them again. My heart broke into pieces. After Sarah died, the house became silent. I could hear the clock ticking. I could hear the wind outside. But I could not hear her voice anymore. I hoped my children would stay with me. I hoped they would fill the house with life again. But they had their own jobs, families, and responsibilities. At first, they visited often. Then the visits became shorter. Then they came only once in a while. One day, all 3 of them sat with me in the living room. My eldest son spoke first. "Dad," he said softly, "we are worried about you. You should not live alone. It would be better if you stayed in a home for elderly people." I wanted to say no. I wanted to stay in the house where I had lived with Sarah. Every wall held a memory. Every room reminded me of her. But I looked at my children and saw that they had already made the decision. My heart hurt, but I nodded. A week later, they brought me to a place called Golden Years Home. It was clean and quiet. The nurses were kind. The rooms were comfortable. But it was not my home. The first night, I sat on the bed and looked at Sarah's photograph. "I'm sorry," I whispered. I could not keep our home. Days passed slowly. Every morning I woke up early and sat by the window. I watched the sunrise paint the sky with orange and pink colors. For a few minutes I felt peaceful. Then the long day began. The other old people sat in the hallway or in the garden. Some talked to each other. Some stared into space. Many looked lost in their own memories. The nurses brought us food, gave us medicine, and asked if we were feeling well. They were kind, but they were always busy. I often wondered about my children. Where were they? Were they happy? Did they ever think about me? I remembered carrying them on my shoulders when they were small. I remembered teaching them to ride bicycles. I remembered helping them with their homework after long days at work. My hands were tired in those days, but my heart was full. They were my pride. They were my joy. They were my whole world. Now the phone rang only sometimes. "Hello, Dad," they would say. "How are you?" Before I could answer properly, they would add, "We're very busy, we'll talk later." Then the call would end. I understood that life was difficult. They had jobs and children of their own. But still, I wished they would visit more often. One afternoon, a nurse named Emily came to my room. She carried a small notebook. "Mr. Carter," she said with a smile, "I have something for you." She gave me the notebook and a pen. "Write your memories," she said. "It may help you feel better." At first, I did not know what to write. My hands shook as I held the pen. But slowly, the words began to come. I wrote about Sarah, her laughter, her cooking, and the way she held my hand during difficult times. I wrote about my children, their first steps, their first words, and their bright smiles. Night after night, I continued writing. The notebook became my friend. When I wrote, I felt as if I was talking to someone who truly listened. I hoped that one day my children would read it and understand how much I loved them. Sometimes while writing, tears fell onto the pages. But I kept writing. It was the only way I could keep my memories alive. And deep inside my heart, I still held a small piece of hope. Maybe one day, my children would remember me. Maybe one day, they would come back. Every day at Golden Years home felt almost the same. I woke up early. I folded my blanket, I washed my face. Then I walked slowly to the window. The window became my favorite place. From there I could see the small garden. There were colorful flowers, there were tall trees, there were birds singing every morning. Sometimes children played outside the fence. Their happy voices reminded me of my own children when they were young. I smiled. Then, after a few seconds, the smile disappeared. The memories always returned. One afternoon, while I was sitting in the garden, a little boy walked toward me. He looked about 8 years old. He had bright eyes and a friendly smile. "Hello, Grandpa," he said. His voice was cheerful. I smiled back. "Hello, young man. My name is Ben," he said. "My mother works here." Looked around and saw Nurse Emily waving at us. She smiled and continued her work. Ben sat beside me without asking. He looked at the flowers. "They are beautiful," he said. "Yes," I replied. "They remind me of my wife." Looked curious. "Tell me about her." No one had asked me that question for a very long time, so I began to speak. Her name was Sarah. She loved flowers. Every spring she planted new roses. Our garden was always full of colors. Listened carefully. He never interrupted me. For the first time in many months, I felt that someone truly wanted to hear my story. From that day, Ben visited me almost every afternoon. Sometimes he brought cookies. Sometimes he brought books. Sometimes he only came to talk. One day he asked, "Grandpa Carter, were you always old?" I laughed softly. No, I was once young just like you. You strong? Yes, I worked as a carpenter. I built tables, chairs, doors, and many beautiful things. Ben's eyes became wide. Did you build your own house? Yes, I built it with my own hands. Your family lived there for many happy years. Smiled. I wish I could see it. So do I whispered. That evening I returned to my room with a warm heart. Talking to Ben made me feel useful again. It reminded me that my life still had value. A few days later, Nurse Emily came to my room again. She looked at the notebook on my table. Have you been writing? She asked. Every night, I answered. She smiled. May I read a little? I nodded. She opened one page carefully. As she read, tears slowly filled her eyes. When she finished, she looked at me. Mr. Carter, you write beautifully. You should keep writing. Your children deserve to know these memories. Her words gave me courage. That night I wrote even more. I wrote about Christmas mornings. I wrote about birthday parties. I wrote about family picnics near the lake. I wrote about Sarah dancing with me in the kitchen while dinner was cooking. Each memory felt alive again. Sometimes I laughed while writing. Sometimes I cried. But every page helped my heart become a little lighter. One rainy afternoon, Ben asked me, "Do your children visit you often?" The question surprised me. I looked at the ground. Very often. Why? They are busy. Stayed quiet. Then he asked, "Do they still love you?" I smiled sadly. I believe they do. They just forgot how important time is. Thought for a moment. My mom always tells me that people are more important than money. His simple words touched my heart. Children often understand life better than adults. That evening I decided to do something I had been afraid to do. I would write letters to my children, not to make them feel guilty, not to complain, only to remind them that I loved them. The next morning I opened my notebook. I took out 3 clean sheets of paper. The first letter was for my oldest son. I wrote, "Dear Michael, I hope you and your family are healthy. I often remember the day I taught you how to ride your bicycle. You fell many times, but you never gave up. I was proud of you then. I'm still proud of you today. I miss you, Dad." I folded the letter carefully. Then I started writing to my daughter. "Dear Emma, do you remember singing with your mother while she cooked dinner? Your voice always filled our house with happiness. I still remember every song. I miss hearing your laughter. Dad." Finally, I wrote to my youngest son. "Dear Daniel, I still remember our fishing trips. You laughed every time a fish escaped. Those were wonderful days. I hope we can laugh together again someday, Dad." When all 3 letters were finished, I placed them inside envelopes. My hands were shaking, not because I was old, because I was hopeful. I gave the letters to Nurse Emily. She smiled warmly. "Mail them today." "Thank you," I whispered. For the next few days, my heart felt lighter. Every afternoon, I sat near the entrance. Whenever I heard a car stop outside, I looked up quickly. Maybe today, maybe this time. But each car belonged to another visitor. Each time my hope became a little smaller. Still, I refused to give up. One afternoon, Ben ran toward me carrying a piece of paper. "I made something for you." He handed me a colorful drawing. It showed an old man sitting under a tree. Around him stood children holding his hands. Above them was a bright blue sky. "Is this me?" I asked. Ben nodded proudly. "And these are your grandchildren." I looked at the drawing for a long time. It was simple, but it was beautiful. I carefully placed it inside my notebook. "Thank you, Ben," he smiled. "You don't have to thank me. You always tell me stories. This is my story for you." I could not stop smiling. That evening, before going to bed, I looked out of the window one more time. The sun was setting behind the trees. The sky turned orange and pink. I held Sarah's old photograph in one hand. In the other hand, I held Ben's drawing. For the first time in many months, I felt something I had almost forgotten: hope. Maybe my letters would reach my children. Maybe they would remember our happy days. Maybe they would come. I closed my eyes and whispered softly, "Sarah, if you can hear me, please bring our family back together." Outside, the wind gently moved the leaves. Inside, I waited, not with sadness, but with hope. Every morning I still sat by the window. I watched the trees, I watched the birds, and I waited. 2 weeks had passed since I mailed the letters to my children. There was still no reply. Some days I felt hopeful, other days I felt lonely. But deep inside I believed they would remember me. One bright morning I heard someone knock on my door. My heart started beating faster. The door slowly opened. A man stood there. For a moment I could not believe my eyes. It was my oldest son, Michael. Behind him were 2 young children. "Dad," he said quietly. "I'm sorry." Tears filled my eyes. He walked toward me and gave me a long hug. "I should have visited you much sooner," he said. I smiled gently. "What matters is that you're here now." The little girl stepped forward. "Hello, Grandpa." She hugged me tightly. The little boy smiled and handed me a drawing. "I made this for you." It showed a happy family standing together. My heart was full of joy. Michael looked at the notebook on my table. "Is this your diary?" he asked. I nodded. "It holds my memories." He opened the first page and started reading. After a few minutes, tears rolled down his face. "Never knew you felt so lonely," he said. "I was always busy. I thought there would always be more time." I placed my hand on his shoulder. "Life moves quickly. That's why we should never wait too long to visit the people we love." Michael nodded. "I understand now. I promise I will come back." Few days later, my daughter Emma arrived. She hugged me and cried, "Dad, I'm sorry. I should have been here." We spent hours talking about old memories. We laughed, we cried. It felt like the old days again. The next week, my youngest son Daniel came to see me. He looked nervous. "I kept making excuses," he admitted. "But your letter changed me. Don't want to lose any more time." I smiled. "I'm happy you're here." Soon, all 3 of my children started visiting me regularly. My grandchildren filled my room with laughter. For the first time in years, I did not feel alone. One Sunday, my family surprised me. They brought a birthday cake. Everyone gathered around me, my children, my grandchildren, even Nurse Emily and little Ben joined us. Michael stood up and smiled. "Dad, we have something to tell you. Repaired your old house. The garden is beautiful again. Sarah's roses are blooming." He looked into my eyes. "Dad, it's time for you to come home." I could not stop crying. These were tears of happiness. A week later, I returned to my home. As I walked through the front gate, memories filled my heart. The flowers were blooming. The garden looked beautiful. It felt as if Sarah was still there, smiling at me. That evening, my whole family had dinner together. We shared stories, we laughed, we looked through old photo albums. The house was full of life once again. Later that night, I walked into the garden. I looked up at the stars. A gentle breeze touched my face. I smiled and whispered, "Sarah." They came back. The first time in many years. My heart felt peaceful. Moral of the story: never wait too long to tell your family that you love them. Spend time with your parents while you still can. One day, memories will be all that remain. Love is not shown by expensive gifts. Love is shown by your time, your care, and your presence. If you have someone waiting for your call today, don't wait, call them, visit them. Because the greatest gift you can give is simply being there. The end.